Hi, welcome back to The Peaceful Home. This is part 2 to the video that I started on chores and allowance for kids. And this is part of the larger series of helping our children to be responsible with money. If you're new here, I'm TeresaElling. I'm a professional organizer, a parenting coach, wife and homeschool mom to 6 graduated kids. And we discuss all things home and family on this channel. There was a social media post where I got a question about chores and allowance, and I just decided I'm just going to jump on here and start filming and start a series. If this is content you enjoy, please consider subscribing and hit the thumbs up button. We left off with figuring out a basic morning and evening routine for our kids. And these are the responsibilities that they have for being a part of the family. So we don't pay them to make their bed or to brush their teeth. We also talked about having a base allowance that is given for being part of the family. So they're not really doing things to earn the allowance. Your kids are going to get their allowance whether they do their routine perfectly or not. They really don't depend on each other, although I will say that there are times when I say, you know what, again, you didn't make your bed today. I'm going to dock 50 cents off your pay. And I just write it down on the fridge or on my planner. It's very important that you keep track of these things. You can't leave it to chance. Your children need to know that you are keeping track of what you owe them. They don't really care if you keep track of their docked pay, but that's important for you to follow through on the consequence, because then that Friday when you're, handing out the money, you're going to say, okay, buddy, you have $8, but you've been docked $1.50 this week. So you're only getting this much, and you talk it through. You're not angry. You're not getting any revenge on them. You're just simply saying, oh, bummer. I know you're going to do better this week, but your pay was docked for this week. The point of all this is you're not telling your children, you better make your bed so you get your money. Okay, we don't want to set that up. We really do want them to kind of be separate, but our children need some money, for one thing, because we're not buying them anything anymore, right? If you missed the very first video in this series about dealing with kids begging for things in the store, make sure you check that one out. I'll put it in the description box. For the most part, you're going to deal with infractions on their routines by a reminder, you need to go in and do this, or, well, as soon as that's completed, you can join us playing outside, or whatever it is. But the allowance is going to stand. Other than maybe having to dock some money if you really feel you need to, they're getting that money because it is for things that they need and things they want, and because you want them to learn to manage money. They can't manage it if they don't have any. This is the main reason I suggest having an allowance in addition to earned money. So you've got your routines in place, you're moving along with that, and they have allowance. And now you're going to choose chores that your children can do for extra pay. Now this is really great because they're learning, hey, my mom's just not going to buy me that Lego set. I have to save up for it. How much do I need? Well, my allowance is this much. That's going to take me like 9 weeks to save for that. I would really like to get it sooner. And this would cause my children to come to me quite frequently. Mom, are there any paying jobs I can do? And they'll just ask. And I'm like, absolutely. Let me get you set up. Now, for those chores, you want to make sure that they are age applicable and that you follow through by inspecting those chores, calling them back if they didn't do it correctly. Again, you are your child's first boss. Make sure that they do the job well and that they come and check in. Mom, I finished this job. I'm ready for inspection. You inspect it, and then you mark it on their time card what you owe them. At the end of the week, they get paid extra in addition to their allowance. Now, I told you that I would tell you what I expected my kids to do with their money once they got it. I explained in, I believe, the first video of the series that we had a couple of rules. The first was they couldn't purchase anything outside of our family values or rules. The second one is they needed to have at least a 24-hour waiting period for something that we felt was an impulsive purchase. And the third one was they couldn't buy sweet things a bunch of sugar or candy without our permission. We just wanted to be able to monitor that. Hey, I just need to interject something really quick. I realized while I was editing this video that I left out something really important. I guess a fourth rule, if you want to call it that, is no borrowing. We never allowed our children to borrow against their allowance or against their pay. They needed to have cash in hand for any purchases. And this really solved a lot of problems. There was no borrowing from siblings, borrowing from parents. And honestly, these days with maxed out credit cards, people that are drowning in debt, this is where these lessons are learned. They are learned at home as a child. So you have an amazing opportunity to teach your children cash on the barrel. The only slight exception we would make to this is if we happen to be out somewhere and our children wanted to buy something and realized they left a wallet at home, maybe they weren't planning on purchasing anything. Usually I would be happy to front them the money right there in the store, and then when we got home, they could pay me back. Now, outside of that, our children could do what they wanted with their money. They can give it away. They can buy a gift for a friend. They can blow it all on an acceptable food choice. One of my girls, when she was very little, so she was getting half her age a week, she would wait for payday. And this was, goodness, so many years ago, over 20 years ago, maybe 25 years ago. And boba was just beginning to be a thing, you know, the little tapioca balls in a drink. And there was a shop that opened up in our town, and she would take her whole allowance, which I think was $4, and she would say, "Mom, can we go get boba?" And I would take her every time, and she would blow the entire thing on boba, probably for about 6 weeks in a row. And then it started to taper off, and then she never got boba again. Now, it's not my place. She wasn't breaking our family rules. Now, did I think that was the best use of her money? Whatever. But it's her choice. And if we don't let our children choose now, then how are they going to learn? I would much rather have my children learn a lesson with a $4 item than a $4,000 or a $40,000 item. So I just want you to keep that in mind. Your kid might go to the dollar store and just blow their money on what you perceive as a bunch of junk. And you know what? They will learn. I mean, either they will literally treat those things as priceless gems, you know, or they'll figure out like, yeah, that broke in 2 days, like that was dumb, you know, and they learn. You don't need to tell them. You don't need to remind them. You don't need to say, well, was that a good purchase? Let them figure it out. They will, I promise. That means you get to be in the place of being the encourager and speaking life over them. Even to be able to say, wow, buddy, that was such a cool toy that you got. And then he says to you, yeah, Mom, but it broke after a couple days. I don't know if I'd buy something like that again. And you say, oh, okay, well, it sounds like you've really thought that through. So amazing when we as parents can release our children to learn from their mistakes and grow. So I don't know if you can tell that I love talking about this so much. I have been all over the place in these videos, and I apologize. I just have so many things that I love to share with parents, so many things that can make a huge impact in your child's life, especially as they get to adulthood. So this is what our kids had to do when they got their money. We sat down, did the figuring. Here's what we owe you. They needed to tithe 10%. They needed to save 10%. And they were able to spend 80%. Now, I will interject that radically changed when our teenagers got their first jobs, and that will be a video in this series. But other than that, they could take that 80% and do what they wanted with it. One thing I did was I would go to the bank, I would get cash, and I would get a lot of denominations. I would make sure that I had plenty of ones, plenty of fives, and some tens, because sometimes my children would be saving up for something and they'd say, Mom, can I give you 10 ones for a $10 bill? Because they love to see those larger bills. And so I always made sure that I had a little stash. And to be honest, we did not have a lot of money. when we were raising our children, when they were young. We were on an extremely tight budget, on a variable income, self-employed, and it was tough, but this was a priority. I would be like, okay, we're not going out for pizza because we're paying our kids allowance. Like, this is so important. It was also worth the time to go to the bank and get the cash and make sure that I had the amounts that I could give them. Because let's just say that their pay was $10 and I hand them a $10 bill. How are they going to divide up the categories? So I would make sure to give them like a 5 and 5 ones. Our kids all had those little coupon organizers that you can buy at the dollar store, the little plastic ones with the tab dividers. And they would write on there church, savings, or bank. And then the rest of the categories were up to them. And they could put boba, or they could put saving for a bike. I remember one day, this is just so sweet, one of my kids came to me and said, "Mom, could I have a category for giving to the homeless?" And I was like, of course. And they wanted to take a portion of their pay every week and put it in there so that they could either give to someone or buy a water for someone. And I just loved their heart. You will be able to see your children's personalities come up out of this. And it's really amazing to see. You will also see their tendencies. Some just spend it all, and the other ones that hardly spend a thing, and they just squirrel it away. And you can see really quickly which personality type they are. It's kind of funny. Another thing that we did teach our children was that savings was long-term savings. That's not saving for a new skateboard or soccer ball. That is put away for your first car or your first house. So if they were saving up for a big thing, it had to be out of that 80%. When their savings category got filled up with a lot of money, they could give it to us and we could actually put it in the bank for them and they could watch their savings grow. Well, I hope this video was helpful. And if you have any comments on what you have done, I'm sure that will help other viewers as they're trying to figure out what to do for their family. If you have questions, please leave them below. I would love to answer them if I can, or possibly do a future video on that topic. Thank you so much for joining me today on The Peaceful Home. Have a great day.